You see, when we study the New Testament, we find that this ability to spontaneously speak in an unknown language by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit is primarily a gift of communication between the believer and God. Now listen, we wouldn't have known that immediately from the book of Acts, but as we understand that from Paul, it helps us figure it out very well what was going on the day of Pentecost. But let me say this again. We find that this ability to spontaneously speak in an unknown language by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, it's primarily a gift of communication between God and the believer. And Paul points this out very plainly in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 2. Let me read that verse to you. I've got these verses up on the PowerPoint, but you might want to make notes of them in your Bible as well and turn to them. The first one is 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 2, where Paul says this: "For he who speaks in a tongue does not speak to men, but to God. For no one understands him. However, in the Spirit, he speaks mysteries." I'll read that again, because it's so plain that sometimes people trip over it. "He who speaks in a tongue does not speak to men, but to God, for no one understands him. However, in the Spirit, he speaks mysteries." Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that when these disciples spoke on the day of Pentecost, they were declaring the wonderful works of God. That is, they were praising God, and they were speaking to God and not to man. They were not preaching to the crowd. It's a very important distinction to make. When the Holy Spirit inspires someone to speak spontaneously in an unknown language, it is not for the purpose of speaking to man, but to God. Now, I have known missionaries who have prayed for that gift to be able to automatically and spontaneously and miraculously speak in another language when they go to a foreign field. I've known missionaries who pray that. I have heard stories of people who have received such a gift. And I would say that that is a miracle that God may perform, but that is not the biblical gift of tongues. Because what does Paul say so plainly in 1 Corinthians 14:2? Again, I want to emphasize it. It's so plain we can trip over it. He says, "He who speaks in an unknown tongue does not speak to men, but to God." What does that mean? It means he does not speak to men, but to God. It means that this divine gift to spontaneously speak in a previously unknown language, it is a gift of communication that God gives, not between man and man, but between man and God. Now, what about these people who say that God blessed them to speak in Swahili or Finnish or Hungarian? Now, those are hard languages. You know, when I went to Germany, we went there not knowing any German at all. And honestly, to do the work that I did in Germany, I didn't have to speak German. I was the director of an international Bible college there. And being an international Bible college, we had students from all over the world. We had students from South America and from Asia and from Australia and New Zealand and from Canada and, of course, from America and, of course, from all over Europe. And when you all sat around a table, there was one common language people had, and that was English. The dominant language of our Bible college was English. So I didn't have to speak any German to do my job, but of course I wanted to learn German. And I prayed that maybe God would give me a miracle of learning German like that. Oh, friends, it did not work. And even though I got to the place where I could sort of stumble along in my German and put together sentences in a real me Tarzan, you Jane kind of way, I never received this gift. Now, I'm not denying that God might not give that gift to somebody in some missionary endeavor or something like that. But what I'm just saying is, if God were to give that miracle to somebody, it would be a unique miracle of God, and it would not be this gift of tongues as Paul describes. Why? Because what did he say in 1 Corinthians 14:2? He who speaks in an unknown tongue does not speak to man, but to God. And what does that mean? He does not speak to men, but to God. Now, many mistakenly interpret this incident in Acts chapter 2. And they assume that when the disciples spoke in these unknown languages, that they used those unknown languages to preach to the crowd. I want you to notice, friends, nowhere does the text say that. All it says is that the people said, we hear them declaring the wonderful works of God. I'm absolutely convinced, based on this passage in 1 Corinthians 14:2 and other passages, that they were spontaneously praising and worshiping God, and the crowd merely overheard their expressions of worship and praise to God. And do you know how else I know that they weren't preaching to the crowd in their individual languages? Because when it did come time to preach to the crowd, Peter could stand up and speak to them in the one language that they all knew, and that was Koine Greek. Right? It wasn't as if they were there before a multinational crowd and no one language would fit everybody. They had one language. It was Koine Greek. And Peter effectively preached a message to them in that language. Now again, notice in the text it says that they hear them speaking in our tongues, Acts 2:11, the wonderful works of God. The gift of tongues, you could describe it as a personal language of prayer given by God, whereby the believer communicates with God beyond the limits of knowledge and understanding. And again, I would base that on 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 14. Here's another verse from 1 Corinthians 14. Look at it here. Paul would later write this: "For if I pray in a tongue, my spirit prays, but my understanding is unfruitful." Do you know what the interesting phenomenon is about praying in an unknown language? Is that it's unknown. You don't know what you're praying. But here's the thing. Paul says very plainly here that my spirit prays. In other words, God knows what you're praying, even if you do not. In saying this, in saying my spirit prays, Paul again emphasizes the essential function of the gift of tongues. It's to communicate to God and not to man. And so what does it do? It bypasses the understanding to pray to God on a directly spiritual level. Now let me say that for some people, the bypassing of the understanding is undesirable. They never want to relate to God except by their understanding and through their understanding. And listen, we value our intellect and our understanding, and we dedicate ourselves to loving God with all of our mind. Did you know he commanded us to do that? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. No, we're not depreciating the value of the intellect or the understanding or the mind. But we also appreciate the limits of our understanding. And we thank God for a way to communicate with him that goes beyond our intellect. Now, I've experienced this many times. Again, my experience out on the mission field has helped illustrate this for me. You know, in the beginning, when I hardly knew any German, somebody would come up to me and want prayer, let's say after a service or something, and I'd be trying to minister to them, and I would understand maybe only 40% or 50% of what they were asking. How would I pray for them? I mean, my heart was moved. I was filled with love and compassion towards that person. How would I pray for them? I would lay my hands on them, I would pray for them the best I could in English, and then I would trust God that he would give me an unknown to me utterance in tongues whereby I would communicate with God about that person and their need right in front of me. It was going around my intellect right to God. Now, I've experienced many times people coming to me and asking, what about should they have the gift of tongues for themselves? Is this something that they should have or they should pursue? Or they come and say, I want this, and I calm them down. I say, now listen, I ask them this question. Do you ever feel limited in your ability to communicate with God? Do you ever feel like there's more praise, there's more worship in your heart than you can ever express with words? Do you ever feel that there's things that you want to pray or cry out to God for, but you just don't have the words for? It's just beyond your ability to communicate. I've asked that question to many people, and you know what answers I get? Sometimes they say, yes, that's me. Oh, I want that. There's more in my heart. There's more in my spirit than I can ever articulate before God. I say to those people, then God has the gift of tongues for you. That's exactly what it's for. I have other people who answer honestly to me. They say, no, that's just not where I'm at. And I say this, I say, great, fine. When you do feel like that, then let's seek God for the gift of tongues. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is very, very important, because I think that many people have sought the gift of tongues for wrong reasons. They seek it to prove to themselves, I'm really filled with the Holy Spirit. Or they seek it to prove to other people, I'm really filled with the Holy Spirit. Can I just say, get over that. If you're a child of God, if you've asked Him to fill you, if you just open your life to the moving and the filling of the Spirit, you don't need any one specific gift of the Holy Spirit to prove to yourself or to prove to anybody else that you have it. But, if there's a cry in your heart that just says, God, there's more in here than I can vocalize to you. I need a way, Lord, I thank you for my understanding. I want to understand all I can around you. But sometimes, Lord, I need to go around my understanding to pray with you just on a level that goes directly to you, spirit to spirit, so to speak. Then seek God for the gift of tongues, and I believe He'll give it to you. Think about how language works. We can say that language is an agreement between the one speaking and the one listening. They agree that certain sounds mean certain things. I say dog, and picture of a dog comes in your mind, right? We agree that that sound means that one thing. And in another language, they would agree that hund means dog, right? In another language, on and on and on. Now, when we speak in tongues, we agree with God that He understands what the Spirit leads us to say, even though we don't understand it. We also believe that it's prayer led by the Spirit, and so it's perfectly suited to the matter at hand. And so I have found great value in praying for my own needs and praying for other people in a language unknown to me, but I believe inspired by the Holy Spirit and known to God. And you know what's kind of funny about this? Oftentimes when I've prayed for people like this, I don't make a big deal about it, right? I don't raise my voice. I don't give my words a cadence or something like that. I'm praying very softly in an unknown tongue for that particular person, to where most of the time they don't even know that I'm doing it. Now, some people would be, well, listen, why didn't you speak louder? I wanted to hear what you were saying. And you know what I always tell them? Brother, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to God. And God heard me just fine. I'm not doing this as a display. I'm not doing this as a show. The point isn't to show you, well, look how spiritual I am with this particular language I have for prayer. That's not the point of it at all. The point is for me to connect with God about this, and I can do that in a very low voice that's unobtrusive, but nevertheless very effective in my communication with God.